People out there who are watching right now and the people who are watching on the replay, hello to you next week. That is yesterday. That is today. Anyway, hi. We're here with the October Pen Parentis Literary Salon, and we are super happy that you're here. As it says in the little ticker tape below, say hello in your comments and tell us where you're watching from. Otherwise, we don't know that you're watching. We want to give a little shout out to the Rochester people who are here from Writers and Books. We're very glad you came. And please come back all the time. We like having lots of people in the audience. This is my co-host, Christina Chu.
Hello.
Hey, Allison. Thanks for saying hi. So let's see. First of all, must say, major support for these salons. Do you hear this? Major support for these salons. It is a new thing for us. We are very excited to have major support. Comes from our friends, drumroll please, at the DeGroat Foundation. They love us and we love them. Their amazing courage to write grants are going to be taking applications in December of this year. You heard it here first. It's much earlier than the last application round. And, go get your application ready because this is a major, major grant. It's $7,000 for 7 people. Plus they gave a whole bunch of $1,500 grants out to runners up. So, go write something amazing. Get your career going, man. Our other sponsor tonight, our October sponsor is Scribente Maternum. We love them. Hi, Rachel. And the writing community is for mom writers or mom identifying writers. And it is having its first in-person retreat, first ever in-person retreat. It is in Baltimore. So get on our mailing list and grab your Pen Parentis discount code. The retreat is going to be on October 20th through 23rd. It is in person in Baltimore. It is associated with Carla Dupre's Fantastic City Lit project. We love Carla. Hi, Carla. And so that's the sponsors. Wasn't that fun? Did you enjoy that? So I'm MM DeVoe, and Pen Parentis is a 501c3 nonprofit that helps writers stay on creative track after they have kids. That would be you guys. Stay on creative track. There, I've done my mission. Okay, that was weird. Anyway, I am very excited because our October Salon has a very cool theme. Christina, do you want to introduce all of our readers for tonight, one at a time? Oh, wait, let's say hi to people real quick before we bring on people, because we just want to say hi to them. Like Leah from Indianapolis, and Jamie from London, Ontario, and Jolene from Pittsburgh, and somebody from Manhattan who doesn't have a name up, but we don't care because we're really happy to see you. I think anybody on LinkedIn, we don't know who you are because we just see LinkedIn user on our stream of fabulous people. Becky Fine Fire Sheets. Hi, title member. And so yeah. Okay, now you can tell who everybody is. Let's bring them on.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Christina Chu, as Mila said, and we're talking this month about sexuality, and I find this to be such an important topic. And I just love it when women are willing to just get out there and talk about it, and especially speak about it through their work. And we have 3 amazing women this salon, and you're really in for a treat. 2 of them are comebacks. So we really build up our family here at Pen Parentis, and it's really such an amazing community. And I have to say, I've worked with this organization for like 7, 8 years now.
I guess 8. It might be 9.
Oh my God.
I can't count.
Maybe that's too much, but I have to say I love working for this organization, in part because Milda's so darn amazing, but because we
get entertaining anyway.
We get to build this awesome community of, like, just wait till you hear these women tonight. We have Ami Sands Brodoff. She's someone I know from my little writing world, and she's an award-winning author of 3 novels, 2 volumes of short stories. We have Alice Kaltman, who's also a comeback. She's the author of the story collection Stagger Wing and 3 other novels. We also have a newcomer, Jennifer Steil, who you are going to be so excited to hear from her.
Jennifer Steil.
Jennifer Steil, sorry. She's the award-winning author who lived in Uzbekistan until very recently, and she'll talk a little bit about that and what's going on in her life. But you've got these authors who are so amazing. I'm so excited for tonight. Should we get started?
I think we should. We have very exciting things. So first of all, let's give a little shout out to Sarah Littman from her car in Brooklyn, and ML Miller from Hastings on Hudson, and we love you, Christina from Becky, and this is my favorite one. This is I'm just going to show you this. Look at this. This is awesome. Watch this. This is actually Nancy Ludmer in Manhattan, as well as Malcolm Fetter and our cat Joey. Hi guys. I love that a cat is like, what is going on? It's so crazy. All right. So hi, all you people out there. Now you know that if you write something, we get to see it. So don't forget to comment and ask questions and use the little hearts. Like on Facebook, if you put a little heart or a little thumbs up or whatever, it kind of floats up our screens. So we like that. And yeah. So that's the story. So now we have a special treat for you, very exciting special treat for you. We will be introducing to you tonight our 2023 Pen Parentis Literary Salon's Pen Parentis Writing Fellowship winner, the winner of the 2023 Writing Fellowship for New Parents. It is another program that we do besides the literary salons, and this year, for the very first time, we are having her read in October, and her is, part of the clue of who it is. So this year's winner is Sarah Courteau, and I'm about to read you her crazy bio. Sarah Courteau was born in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. Now, I have driven through the Ozark Mountains. It has a cave, 2 caves. Never mind. One of 9 children. She was one of 9 children. She was raised for much of her childhood on a farm that lacked indoor plumbing, and for a period lacked electricity and a telephone. Among her earliest memories is watching the twitching ears on a team of horses that pulled a covered wagon that her parents built to travel from Arkansas to Nebraska. She attended Yale University and earned an MFA in nonfiction writing at the University of Iowa. For several years, she was the literary editor of the Wilson Quarterly. She lives in the Bronx with her husband and daughter. Please welcome Sarah Courteau. Sarah, where are you? Yay!
Hi.
I am now going to maybe you can, we could spotlight her while we read her the letter. So every year, the previous winner writes a letter and usually reads it in person, but this is too many people on a Zoom. So I will be reading the letter from Kelly Shalaki Clark. Now, Kelly, our outgoing winner, published 15 short stories, including her prize-winning Dear Barbie Arm on the corner of 5th and Market, since winning the fellowship.
No pressure.
Just saying. She placed or nominated for 9 awards and was included in the top very short fictions in 2022. So, here is what she has to say to you. Here's
Don't worry, Sarah, we're rooting for you.
Here's what we have. Here's what Kelly had to say to you. Dear Sarah, I've always had a cringy love-hate relationship with the phrase, I'm proud of you. It's one of those canned phrases that can come across like something feigned, a hollow throwaway. In the worst case, it can feel downright condescending, especially if the person saying it doesn't know what the battle was or the worth of the win. But those same 4 words said by the right person or people at the right time or place can mean everything. Validation, love, acceptance, truth. So take this from a place of sincerity and truth when I say, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, Sarah, because I know what this honor might mean to you. And also being proud of you allows me to be just a little bit proud of myself too, which isn't always easy, right? When I got the call from Milda last year, I was crammed uncomfortably in a steamy backyard 2-person tent, reading poems with my then 7-year-old daughter, to whom I had been COVID tethered for the previous year and a half. I didn't answer the phone. It was a New York City number. I was in Seattle. It had to be spam. I almost didn't bother to listen to the voicemail. Who leaves voice messages anymore? Milda does. I do. Thankfully, it's Milda DeVoe from Pen Parentis. I'd really like you to give me a call back. What? When I returned the call and learned I'd won the fellowship, it felt like, and I'm proud of you, from a whole team of the right people. People who care about things I care about, not just the writing and the creativity, but the parenting that can often lodge itself directly in the pathway of the writing and the creativity, creating both the biggest barriers and the richest fodder. We write around it, under it, through it, we write. And when a group of parent writers says, we like what you wrote, it feels good, which is to say, you should feel good. We, this collective we that matters to people like us, like we like what you wrote. We're proud of you. I'm proud of you. My do with it what you will advice as outgoing fellow, use this fellowship and all that comes with it, the support, the cash, your own beaming sense of pride, in a way that best works for you. And try not to feel too bad if your life, like mine, takes a bunch of wrong turns all of a sudden and leaves you unable to write for a while, because it takes all the breath you have just to stay afloat. Don't be too hard on yourself if you miss your accountability group on account of not being able to be accountable for a spell. You'll come back. You'll write again. You'll find other things to be proud of for the time being. And when the dust clears, you'll write again. Around it, under it, right down through it. You'll write through it and be proud of yourself again. But let's hope instead that from here on out, your life takes all the right turns, in which case, use this fellowship to fly. I'll be watching and cheering you on, along with the rest of this supportive collective we. We're proud of you. I'm proud of you. Congratulations. Sincerely, Kelly.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing, Kelly. Thank you so much. This fellowship has already it's already done amazing things for me. Just coming at a time when I was struggling to get my feet back under me after having a kid. And it literally came at a good time because I was on vacation in a fight with my husband, which is what you do when you don't have time to fight in like real life. So you wait till vacation to do it. And I got the call from Milda and I went out, I stepped out of our place we were staying, and then I got to walk back in with the mic drop that I had won in this fellowship, and my husband has actually been my greatest supporter, and he was thrilled for me. And I also, I mean, what could you say after that? I don't know. I don't even know what we were fighting about, but I won.
Please read your story. Please read the winning story and introduce us to the wonder that is your writing.
That's wonderful, and I hope I have a chance to thank Kelly in person someday.
You will at AWP this year.
That's right. All right. This story is After the Storm. The hurricane hit like an old boxer, sapped of its former power, but still dangerous. We were hearing reports about power outages. The lights in our house only blinked, and an ornamental bush in the front yard snapped off at the base. I'd had tepid feelings about that bush, a relic of the former owner's manicured aesthetic. Our new home had held up. The sky washed clean, my husband and I set out to survey the damage to the neighborhood. Ivan strode ahead with our dog. I was moving slowly, filled with the awareness that I was a carapace for something delicate. Our tiny embryo seemed as ephemeral as an idea. Some days I feared a lapse in concentration would be enough to vanquish it from my belly. Twigs and branches littered the sidewalk, and I picked my way, watching my feet. Still, I nearly stepped on the pink creature curled on the concrete. Perhaps 3 inches long, hairless and wrinkled, its ears translucent commas, its eyes dim blueberries sealed over with skin. It squirmed, its mouth opening and closing as though on a tiny hinge. A few feet away rose a 50-foot oak. I felt a queasiness that wasn't morning sickness and hurried to catch up to Ivan. Turning the corner, we saw a tree limb lodged in the windshield of a car. Someone's having a bad day, Ivan said. The image of the injured pink creature rose in my mind. This was quite a storm, I said. I wouldn't tell Ivan, I decided. I would bear the burden of what I had seen alone. After a few more steps, I said, the wind blew a baby squirrel down from its nest. It's still moving. Where? Ivan asked. Back there, by the oak tree in front of the house. That's a maple. What? No, it's an oak. You can tell by the leaves. Ivan's confidence was part of what attracted me to him, but his sense of the definite was often misplaced. It'll be dead by the time we're back, Ivan said. It probably already is. We continued our walk. Several cars were damaged and a couple of streets were blocked by fallen trees. An ambulance screamed by. We moved through the mayhem untouched, like visitors. We were launching our baby's life in a place we barely knew ourselves, a place that suddenly felt dangerous. As we headed back up the block toward our house, dread gnawed my belly. I wanted Ivan to be right, for the squirrel kitten to be still, its clawed limbs curled in surrender. Ahead of me, Ivan shooed the dog off the sidewalk, and I quickened my pace. I was again looking down at the squirrel, opening and closing its mouth. I have to put it out of its misery, Ivan said. He was right, but for a moment I hated him. We were helpless to do anything for this tiny creature other than relieve it of its suffering. It was on its own journey. I reached for the dog's leash, and Ivan picked up a brick. I looked away and heard a thud. When I turned back, he was scraping something off the sidewalk into the grass. As we mounted the front steps, I reached up and rested my palm on his broad back, not sure whether I was offering consolation or seeking it. I started to speak. Ivan shook his head. I can't. We entered our house, together with the mysterious being whose life was already entirely her own. We could do nothing for her but love her. It scarcely seemed enough.
So Sarah, we are very excited to launch your career. So that story is going to be in this magazine, the Dreamers Creative Magazine. It's a very pretty magazine, see? And it's going to come out in November. So we are very, very pleased, and we look forward to what else you write and where else you publish. And we will be keeping tabs on you. So yay, Sarah!
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And now it is time for a regularly scheduled program on sexuality.
So let's just say it this way. Sexuality is a topic that's really important to me because as an Asian American woman, I feel like it's so important to comment about, what sexuality is, how it affects women, especially Asian American women, and how it plays into this whole idea of, the exotic Asian woman. And of course, my opinion about this is so different from other authors and where they're coming from. So I think that's what's so interesting about having these other authors here today. As I've mentioned in the past, our authors usually pick the topic that they want to read about and speak about. And so these women have chosen this topic and they have a lot to say, which is really exciting. So I'm going to briefly introduce each of these three women. I'd love, after I introduce you, I'll give you a longer introduction. And when you speak, talk a little bit about the project that you're reading from, and then then read so that the audience understands where you're coming from. Okay, so our first reader tonight is Ami Sands Brodoff. She's the award-winning author of 3 novels and 2 volumes of stories, as I mentioned. The Sleep of Apples, her new linked story collection, centers on 9 closely linked characters who confront crisis related to mental illness, mortality, and gender identity. Ami has won the Canadian Jewish Book Award for Fiction, the Vine Award, and was a finalist for the Relit Award. Her debut novel, Can You See Me, was nominated for the Pushcart Prize and is a recommended book of NAMI, the National Alliance for Mentally Ill. This is her second appearance at Pen Parentis. Yay, yay, yay! So I will briefly introduce Alice Kaltman. She's the author of the story collection Staggerwing and 3 novels. We will read a larger bio for her. And Jennifer Steil. Steil. Oh, I keep saying it. Jennifer is not in Uzbekistan right now, but she was living there, and she'll talk a little more about that. But she was a finalist for the 2021 Lambda Literary Lesbian Fiction Awards, so we're going to hear a little bit from her. But first, back to Amy. Amy, please talk about your project.
Yeah, sure. So this was my first foray into doing a linked story collection, and I found it a really fun format. I've been inspired by, Joan Silber and Elizabeth Strout and David Saloy, and I just like the idea of having less heavy exposition and the reader doing a little bit more of making the connections and feeling a little jolt of adrenaline or endorphins when they see how all these characters, these disparate characters, are connected. It's a neighborhood that unites my characters. I was living in Montreal for 25 years, so it's a neighborhood called Saint Henri that's runs along the Lachine Canal, where I used to walk and bike ride, and in every season. And it's a really diverse neighborhood. So there's a lot of, and it was gentrified, so there's conflict between the old and the new, and the haves and the have-nots. So it seemed a very rich place to set this collection. And I try to bring sexuality into all of my work. I was so excited about this topic because it's just another way that you can build your characters. We bring who we are into the bedroom. So that's all I'll say about the book for now. I'm going to share a little. This is the lovely cover. And I'm going to share a little excerpt from a story called The Arrangement, which centers on a couple, Guy and Natalie. They were childhood sweethearts, and they're having trouble conceiving. And so they enlist the support of their best friend, Rachel. And I'm going to read a little bit from the middle of the story. Fact or myth? Women ovulate on day 14 of their cycle. The first time we met up at our house, in our bed, the sex was silent and mechanical, a military operation, and I deployed. Natalie was kind of off to the side in a strange crouch during the whole business, which made me feel bad, as if this big idea was a big mistake. And Rachel lay there on her back, rigid, eyes closed, a human sacrifice. I felt myself float out of my body, watching, as if observing another man. It was an eerie, uncomfortable feeling, one that came back years later after my trucking accident. The three of us rendezvoused a couple of times after that, always at our house, in our bed. Disaster. After each encounter, we sat in the living room, drinking bourbon, getting smashed, hoping our awkward shame would dissipate in relation to how much alcohol we consumed. Part of the problem was that I had a crush on Rachel. I didn't let myself dwell on it too much. I'm good at blocking out what I don't want to think about, but sometimes I needed to daydream, like you need a drink or a cigarette or a chocolate bar. It was purely chemical, the way I felt my heart beat faster when she was around, and I got clumsy and inarticulate. We were about to give up on our arrangement when we planned the birthday weekend at the Bonaventure Hotel downtown. It was a big splurge for us since making ends meet was a continual challenge. But what is life without a splurge now and then? Fact or myth? Having sex daily increases the chance of conceiving. Things just felt different that winter weekend at the hotel. There was something about being in our own city, but away from the daily grind, plus the luxury of room service, the novelty of the rooftop heated pool, and the small tablets of expensive chocolate on our pillow. The whole experience was new to the three of us, like time out from time. We made love, we fucked, we shagged multiple times over the weekend, and I could have done more. Back then, I was pretty keyed up and tightly wound sexually. Hell, I was young and horny, so were the women. We had sex in the bed with its fresh sheets and fluffy cream-colored duvet. We fucked on the floor, and I should be more embarrassed to confess, we got it on in that rooftop pool, which was more challenging physically than I'd anticipated. There was a window of time when we were the only folks in there and no lifeguard to bust us. I just felt free, released, delivered. Excuse the pun. And so did Natalie and Rachel. A flow state that's impossible to force will. It just happens, and what bliss. I never thought I'd be comfortable in a threesome, but it felt just right that weekend. Making love to Rachel and Natalie and Rachel making love to me and to each other. All this love all around. Yeah. Thank you. That's a little appetizer.
Thank you, Amy. That was lovely.
Thanks.
I have a lot of questions, but we're going to come back to the questions after one reads, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So our next reader is Alice Kaltman. Alice, it's so lovely to have you back. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be back. It's so cool.
So Alice, like I said, is the author of the collection Stagger Wing. Her new linked collection, Almost Deadly, Almost Good, arrives November 2022. Just around the corner, everyone. Get it on your Amazon. Alice's stories appear in Lost Balloon, The Pinch, Joyland, Hobart and Bull, and in numerous other anthologies. She's read her work at Micro Podcasts, Elevator Stories, and No Contact. Alice splits her time between Brooklyn and Montauk, where she lives with her husband and her dog child, Ollie. Her human daughter, Noah, is a bona fide grown-up, traveling around Europe and writing screenplays like, just like her mom, into the writing in her spare time. This is Alice's second time appearing here with us. So everyone, please welcome Alice.
Yay!
Thank you so much for having. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you guys so much. Pen Parentis is such an amazing organization, and parenting never ends. What can I say? I'm like, I'm coming on to I'm soon to be, in the next phase, but anyway. Bravo to everyone. Anyway, so I am also going to be reading from a linked story collection, my new book. This is the ARC. We don't have the actual print copies yet. I'm always like, oh yeah, these reverse screens are weird.
Reverse screens are hard. Like, oh.
So it's a link. It's called Almost Deadly, Almost Good, a collection of sins and virtues, because the way that the stories are linked is that they're all loosely based on the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues. I never knew about the 7 heavenly virtues until I started this whole project. Anyway, appropriately, I'm going to be reading a small section of the story called Sunset Lounge, which first appeared in Joyland magazine, and it's the lust story. And I guess what you need to know about the main character, Miriam, is that she's a perimenopausal woman in a stale marriage, and her daughter, who's in college, becomes involved with a much older man who's the same age as her parents, and his name is Eduardo. And it's basically a story about like sexual reawakening gone awry. And what I'm going to read to you is something that Miriam does. This is after she's first met Eduardo in person. Their dried up middle-aged trajectory was so typical and predictable it made her cringe. And all those annoying habits, the nose picking when he thought no one was looking, the secret but not secret cigarette smoking, the chewing with his mouth open, the classic leaving a wet towels on the bed, the pontificating even after he'd been told, yes, I get it, Henry, I get it. I understand. The never remembering women's names, but always remembering the men's. The laugh that sounded like a drunk hyena. The bad breath. The incessant farting. The terrible jokes. A quarter of a century, Miriam thought, and here we are, side by side and miles apart. As she lay there, she felt the remaining dribs of fondness she still had for Henry squeeze out of her like the residue of toothpaste in a crumpled tube, replaced by the plump desire for Eduardo. Very quietly, with her husband lying next to her, Miriam made her own tumult in the hotel bed. She was no stranger to erotic fantasies, but she'd fallen out of the habit. Miriam had a robust backlist of imagined sexual encounters, outlandish lusty assignations with postmen, lifeguards, neighbors, movie stars, and other assorted randoms she's depended on for years. But perimenopause had depleted her in more ways than one. Or so she thought, until she'd met Eduardo. Newly juiced, she returned to the shared moments with Eduardo earlier that day. He is rolling ham into tubes. She is slicing the tomatoes and watching the juices run. In this fantasy version of the afternoon's events, Miriam's flirtatious cues are not subtle. There's little small talk, though Eduardo does tell Miriam in his charming broken English how lovely she is, how desirable. There's no one like you, Miriam, he whispers. You are special. He unbuttons her blouse, reveals her perfect melon-like breasts in a lacy pink bra. Miriam doesn't have such a bra, and those breasts are not hers either. This is an imagined body. It's a different body, a juicier body. But this is Miriam's fantasy, and she can do with it what she wants. Eduardo lifts Miriam onto the kitchen table, and her hips rumple the paisley print tablecloth. He pulls off her pants. Pants she doesn't, in reality, own. Pants that have no zippers or buttons or hooks. Pants that slip off as if made of Teflon. Fantasy Miriam has fantastic legs and no extraneous hair, except where fantasy Eduardo now nuzzles. Real Miriam fingered her own damp crevices, squeezed and pinched ignorable flesh. She writhed in the sheets and shuddered, finally turning her face away from snoring Henry to silently scream, "Oh, Eduardo!" into her pillow.
Thank you, Alice. That was wonderful. Thank you. Great place to end. Great. Okay, our final reader tonight is Jennifer Steil. Listen, it's Steil, but I have always remembered her as Steele, in part because she is like steel. I am counting on her to be like steel. Honest. She is that person. So sorry if you get it wrong in your head, but that's how I remember it. And I'm always going to hold on to that, especially now. Okay. So Jennifer Steil is the award-winning author, and she is the author of Exile Music 1, which won the grand prize in the International Islands 2020 Book Awards and the Multicultural and Historical Novel Awards in the International Book Awards. It was also a finalist for the 2021 Lambda Literary Lesbian Fiction Award, the Bisexual Book Award, and the Annie Award. That's a lot of awards. Her previous novel, The Ambassador's Wife, won the 2013 William Faulkner William Wisdom Creative Writing Competition Best Novel Award and the 2016 Philip McMath Book Award. Her memoir, The Woman Who Fell from the Sky, chronicles her tenure editing a Yemeni newspaper. Jennifer's work has appeared in the New York Times, New Orleans Review, Saranac Review, World Policy Journal, Mystery Weekly Magazine, The Week, Time, Life, Puxtung Review, The Washington Times, Vogue UK, Die Welt, New York Post, The Rumpus, Mystery Magazine Weekly, Irish National Radio, France 24, and CBS Radio. Her child is non-binary and the light of her life. This is her first appearance with us, and we are so lucky to have her. Everyone, please welcome Jennifer Steil.
Jennifer!
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Christina. And you can pronounce my name however you want. Add a few extra vowels if you want. So I'm really excited to be here and to be reading alongside such fantastic fellow authors. So thank you. I'm excited to talk about sexuality because I'm a bisexual, pansexual, queer author who has, spent a long lifetime looking for books with protagonists like me and not finding any. I've read a lot of lesbian literature and gay literature, but I never really read anything about someone who sleeps with everyone, which is what I like to do, So I'm married now. But that doesn't change my sexuality. That's the thing about being bisexual is once you're partnered up, half of your sexuality is invisible. So you look either gay or straight. So it's kind of a weird sexuality. Anyway, so there's a lot of good bisexual literature coming out now. So almost all of my books have queer protagonists. So my memoir has me, of course. And then my first book has a bisexual protagonist, and Exile Music, which I'm going to read from. So I lived in Bolivia for 4 years. And while I was there, I met some survivors who had fled Austria and Germany in the late 1930s, Jewish survivors who had fled the Nazis to La Paz, Bolivia. And when I first moved there, I had been unaware that there were around 20,000 Jewish refugees in Bolivia during and after the war. And so I interviewed them, and, I originally thought about writing this book as nonfiction, but so many of the people who could tell me the details about their lives were dead, and the people I interviewed often couldn't remember a lot of the details about their younger years. And I thought, I'm going to report this so that people who read it will understand the context. Anyone who lived through that experience would recognize the context, but a fictional story might allow me to create a more moving narrative for my reader. So this is a work of fiction. And my main character is, I think, 10 or 11 when the book starts, and in her 40s when it ends. So it's kind of the trajectory of her life and how she not only adjusts to a new country, but eventually discovers her sexuality. And I can't read you the real sex scenes because it gives away the ending. But I will read you something from her childhood. So this little scene takes place. So Orly, my family, my Jewish family, is a family of musicians. The father's a viola player with the Vienna Philharmonic. The mom is an opera singer, and Orly grows up around music, my main character. So this scene, her best friend is Annalisa. Annalisa lives in the same building, and they've grown up together. So this scene takes place just after Orly has been to the opera with her mother for the first time. And she's very young in the scene. I think she may be as young as 6 in this scene. So anyway, but you just need to know that she's been to the opera the night before, and now she's meeting her friend. Okay. Oh, wait, I have to change glasses. Sorry. Different glasses for reading. Annalisa was at our door the next morning, wrapped up in her red woolen coat and hat before I'd finished getting dressed. Did you really go? Did you see the whole thing? Were the singers very good? Were they as good as your mother? Annalisa had never seen my mother perform. Even I hadn't yet seen her. But she loved when my mother sang us My Gorilla Has a Villa at the Zoo as we walked to the park or when we finished our homework. My mother sang all the time, even when she wasn't singing opera. Close the door, you're letting the cold hallway air in. I was still on the floor, lacing up my boots. Anna stepped into the apartment, pulling the door shut behind her. It was magical and scary, and I got to go to Cafe Spurl after in the middle of the night. I wish you could have come. Annalisa's parents didn't let her stay out late at night. Me too. Anna sat down next to me, pulling her knees into her chest. When my Muti sings, then you can come see her, can't you? Maybe. I finished lacing my boots and stood up. Don't forget your bunny. Steffi emerged from the kitchen to pass me Lebkuchen, soft and cinnamon brown like the cookies he was named after. She was taking us to the Riesenrad. And your hat? I don't need a hat. I'm never cold. Me too. I never get cold, Annalisa echoed, leaping up and twirling in the hall. Even when we're sledding or skating or having snowball fights or I don't care if neither of you ever gets cold. You are wearing hats or we don't go. Come on, get moving, both of you. Steffi handed me my scratchy wool hat and pulled on her coat. I grabbed Anna's arm and dragged her out the door. Not until we got down to the street and had raced ahead of Steffi did I tell her the most interesting thing I had discovered at the opera. Anna, I met a woman last night who was dressed as a man. You mean in trousers? Lots of women wear trousers now. She skipped ahead of me. No, not just trousers. She was all dressed up in a tuxedo, and she had short hair. I jogged to keep up. Steffi was a whole block behind us, calling our names. Really? Did she look like a man? I considered this. You could tell she was a woman. She was pretty, but in a different way. I didn't know how to express the way Odiane had carried herself, the way that she walked and talked as if she had every right to be like she was. She lives with a singer who works with my mother. Was the singer dressed in a tuxedo too? No, she had long blonde hair up on her head and a green dress. My mother said they were roommates. Maybe they didn't have a man to go with, and so they were pretending to be married. Maybe, but they live together. Maybe they are married. Well, can girls marry girls? I don't know. Annalisa took my mittened hand in hers, and we stopped to allow Steffi to catch up. But if they can, I'm marrying you. I laughed, my boots slipping over the snow. That's what I told my mother. Will you wear the tuxedo or shall I?
Yay! Awesome.
I love that euphemism, roommates.
Yeah.
The long ago days, right?
I
Those
remember
days do seem like long ago. Where it was
Yeah.
I had an aunt who had a roommate, and when I asked about it, they said, "Oh, they're just roommates," and that was very puzzling to me. If only they would have just said it straight, then we wouldn't have been so confused growing up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, Jennifer, you mentioned something about writing about what you haven't seen and you wanted to see, like,
Right.
and I think that this is something that's really important. I think that all three of you have this in common, in that, I mean, I'm pretty sure, Alice, when you were talking about premenopausal issues, and Amy, you're talking about a lot of the same bisexual kind of issues, and it's kind of interesting because I think sexuality has been one of those issues where people, like, if you write about sex, that's not real literature. That's territory that's considered what, like, too risque or something. Can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to do this and how you're trying to change that perception? Let's start with Jennifer.
Oh, okay. So I mean, it's interesting, like the way that I did it in Exile Music is I didn't want to necessarily, because Orly wouldn't have had the words necessarily, and she wouldn't have been, the words, lesbian, for example, to talk about how she felt about Annalisa and later other people. And so in order, I had to do, one thing about writing historical fiction is I feel like there's a lot of historical fiction that feels like we the current generation always feels like they invented sex, right? And that gay sex is a recent invention. It's new. But no, I mean, gay sex has always existed. And, you know, no matter, even when it didn't have a name or anything. So in Exile Music, like her sexuality is never named. There's no opportunity for her to go to a pride march or anything. You know, she ends up living in Bolivia, which is a very conservative country. And I read some really fascinating books, some lesbian novels that were published in the early 1930s. And that was really interesting to me, just to get a real insight into the lesbian underworld of that time, and to read literature, gay literature that was written at that time, because we think, well, gay literature is recent. Well, no, there is gay literature. You just dig around a little bit. And that book, like one of the books I read, The Scorpion, makes an appearance in the book. And I guess it didn't even occur to me that the book wouldn't be literary. I mean, it's not, I mean, sexuality is part of the book, but there's a lot of other parts of the book as well. It's kind of integrates into it, because I feel that sexuality doesn't completely define us. It's an essential part of who we are, but it's and it's confusing, and it causes all sorts of other things to happen. But then, you know, I have a character who's also grieving a number of different people and traumatized and living in a culture that's not her own, and learning a new language. And her mother has stopped singing when they get to Bolivia. And so I don't know. So I'm not quite sure that answers the question entirely, but I think I want to also say that, you know, one of the first books I read about a bisexual that was so beautifully literary and so deeply erotic at the same time, and never uses the word bisexual. The protagonist just cavalierly sleeps with men and women without defining their sexuality. And that's Elaine Castillo's book, America's Not the Heart. It's just like, the whole time I was reading it, I kept saying, oh, this is amazing. You know, I love it. It's so, it was the first brilliant literary erotic book that I found a character that I could relate to in that way, I guess. So that's a plug for another author. So.
That's wonderful. How actually, you know, Carlos Bulosan's book is America's Not in the Heart. So that's very interesting. I'm gonna read up on that and see if there's any connection there. Amy, how about you?
Well, I don't think at all that if a book has sex in it, that it's smutty. I mean, I think one of the problems is writing well about sex. And I think women do a much better job. Writers. I'm sorry to offend any men in the audience, but and it's just challenging. I think one of the things I look for is sort of fresh language, and no pun intended, because the language to be new. For example, the language of sexuality, you know, we have this kind of pastel, you know, ushy gushy, vague kind of language of sex. And then we have the language of porn, which I remember in college, I saw my first pornography film, and it was so boring. And, you know, the language of porn is sort of not that evocative. So I really admire, you know, I learned a lot from Mary Gateskill, who I think writes beautifully about sex and also is a bisexual writer. And on a recent really long car trip, we were listening to Dennis Lehane, who's a male writer, who's a thriller writer. And his sex scenes were fantastic. And as I say, man, I've been groaning sometimes reading, and not with pleasure. So I never think it's not literary. I think it's another thing that, you know, you really can bring to develop your characters. And, you know, it doesn't always have to be good sex. I mean, maybe I'm writing a book now. One of the main characters is a young Hasidic girl. She has a breakdown and leaves the Hasidic Haredi community. And so when she has her first sexual experience outside of marriage, that's going to be really freighted, and, you know, all the baggage from, you know, her fundamentalist religion. So it's just a really fascinating thing. I'm also Jewish, and I think you know, I don't feel a lot of shame about sexuality. I think, you know, I was raised where sexuality was, you know, pretty accepted. And my children, I think Christina and Milda know this already. My older son is gay, and my younger son is a transgender man. So, you know, I know their friends and their partners and all of that. So, but I never think it's not literary unless it's not well written, which, you know, happens sometimes.
That's what I was going to say. Like, if it's not well written, it's not literary. It doesn't matter what the subject is.
Well,
Yeah.
there is that award, like the worst sex scene.
Right, that's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
The worst sex scenes. I think Jonathan Franzen compared breasts to muffins or something. Great
Muffins.
sex. But Dennis Lehane, that came as a surprise. I mean,
I
he really,
know the book you're talking about because I listened to Dennis Lehane and on audiobook, and there was one scene with this woman. Yeah, it was really good. It's really good. Yeah,
he's really a good writer. I don't usually,
actually.
I don't think we should label books because that's also like putting things in boxes. But I hadn't really read much of his work, but there's actually quite a lot of sexual scenes in Darkness Take My Hand, and they're really, really well done. I was so, check it out. And it has an amazing narrator for the Audible book who just takes on all the characters, and you know, so it's an enjoyable experience.
Wonderful. Alice, how about you?
You know, my experience like writing about sexuality. So when I first started writing, which late in life, I was in my first writing group. We were all gave each other at one point we gave each other assignments to do something that was out of their comfort zone. And I realized that I had just been starting to write. I'd written for kids, and I wasn't doing a lot of, you know, any kind of sort of gender or sexuality related content in my children's books, but I was writing short story. I just started writing short fiction, and so I thought, and I just thought I need to write about sex because I don't write about sex. And the first thing I did was I had this. I gave myself this assignment, and what I did was a pure dialogue between two women in their 50s about this one woman having had sex with some guy. And it was just like a real conversation. And so I think from that point, after I wrote that short piece, I actually used the format of it as part of also my previous book before, Almost Deadly, Almost Good, was Dolphins. And in that book, there are 4 sections of pure dialogue. And one of those, I used this conversation between these two women, kind of rewrote it to match a character in that book. And my feeling about sexuality and writing about it is I'm very interested in the kind of messy, awkward, not beautiful, kind of funny aspects of sexuality.
You couldn't tell from your reading.
Yeah, no, I know. And most of the time it's not, like Amy was saying, it's not like, sex is so wonderful. It's more like weird, awkward,
Yeah, and those things are really interesting too. I mean, Jennifer was saying she didn't see pansexual, bisexual. The thing that I haven't seen much of are older characters.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you all, I'm sure many of you saw this amazing photo story in the New York Times about sexuality in older couples, and they, and it was so groundbreaking. Did anyone see that? It came out maybe, I don't know when, like a while ago, but maybe in the magazine section.
Did you say it was a photo essay?
Yeah, they had a lot of photos, and really older people. And I think that there's this myth that people stop being sexual,
Right,
when they're over a certain age. You're out of the picture. Sexually their whole lives.
Right.
And I think there's so much ageism, and we don't want to see that.
yes.
And so that's something in my book. The title novella centers on an older woman who actually is facing mortality, and the relationship she forms actually with the guy named Guy that you just met in this story. And she meets him because he works at a grocery store, and he delivers food to her apartment. So she's not only older, but she has cancer. And so I have some sexual scenes between them. So I'd like to see more of that, and some idea that, stop stigmatizing older people, that, they're not sexual anymore, because it's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially older women just in general are kind of dismissed in so many ways. Like they, certainly sexually, and I totally agree with everything you just said about the lack of older people having a sex life or feeling sexual. And I love like awkward sex scenes where someone's like, oh, you're on my hair, because like that's real. Like you're like, oh wait, cramp, like those kind of awkward, like, real things that happen, because sex is really awkward and hilarious.
Or bad sex, or like how, I mean, like maybe there's something where like someone's having sex and they're not into it, right? It's like they're putting up with it for whatever reasons, or it's, in the book before this one, there's it's also a town kind of like yours, Amy, where everyone's connected through this living in the same community, but the people that have the best sex are the people in their mid 70s. And that couple are the ones who have the good sex. The ones who have the shitty sex are the middle-aged people, and the kids are just like totally confused. So it's wanted to like it with that book. I really wanted to shake it up and like make all these sort of like stereotypes we have and preconceived ideas we have about it. And like, no, it's like,
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like in the media and in movies, it's like these really, really young people have like the most romantic sex. It's like they don't even know what they're doing half the time.
No, it takes a long time to figure it out, So of course older people would have better sex. They have more practice. Like that just makes sense. I mean, and also, I got once a hilarious writing prompt from Janet Fitch, who said, I want you to write a sex scene about sex, like, and desire for someone who is repulsive, like in whatever way. And so that was a challenge, you kind of define repulsive and then decide why your character's having sex with that person. And that was a
This is just an audience comment. Helene says, Vladimir by Julia May Jonas focuses on the sexual fantasies and actions of an English lit professor at a small liberal arts New England college.
Interesting.
I think everybody has their favorite sex scenes in different books, and like things. I was wondering if you three authors have ever written from the point of view of another gender, whether it be male or non-binary. Have you done that? And did you run it by a reader, or like did you have, you have sensitivity readers read things that are not necessarily, or did you do that with your things? How did it go? How did it feel to write?
Like a woman writing from a male point of view? Is that what you're
sex in particular? Yeah.
I read something tonight. I have many male points of view in this book. I don't know. I think that I kind of trust myself. I also have a non-binary teenager who's the main character in this book, who's suffering a lot. And as I said, one of my children has come out as a transgender man. And I felt like, from the standpoint of a mother, that I have some understanding, not from a standpoint of I myself am not transgender, but I kind of trusted myself, and I didn't really feel. There are times in my writing career where I have felt really uncomfortable about material, and again, I go with my gut, and this was not one of those situations. And I don't mean to sound like overconfident or, like arrogant, but there have been times I can tell when I'm writing something where I don't feel it's authentic to me. And then, I kind of sort of trash that project or whatever. So, but I think, this is a really controversial point of view, but I think it's really important. I know we're in this own stories period. And as a novelist, fiction is really my passion. And I have written some essays, they're very short. But as a novelist, I feel like imagination, empathy, and knowing something. But if I could only write personally for me, if I could only write about, myself, and I feel that I need some permission to imagine. Like, for example, my ancestors were Hasidic, so I'm not Hasidic, but I'm learning all about it. And I would feel like in a straitjacket if, I think this own story stuff is very, very important. Like I came from Canada, and the Indigenous people are just now beginning to publish and tell their own stories. And they're tired of white writers telling their stories.
Well, in part because they don't tell them right. They tell it from a very white perspective usually.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's right. And so it's just really complicated. I mean, and controversial. How much can you imagine? I mean, I think as a fiction writer, sort of like empathy, imagination, and knowing what you're writing about. I feel totally comfortable writing in a male point of view. I don't know why, but
And it's interesting because men so rarely get asked. I mean, men always write from the point of view of women, like Madame Bovary, like whatever. From the beginning of time, they've been using our voices. So, I mean, it's funny. I've written from the point of view of a man, but I'm not, for some reason, I don't have any interest in describing heterosexual sex. I just feel like, I don't know, it's been done.
Too much.
So I'm not against heterosexual sex. I am married to a man. But I don't know, when it comes to writing, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I don't know. I just like writing about women. I just feel like, I don't know, I'm kind of bored with men. I mean, I don't mean to offend men, but they have kind of taken over most of literature for most of history. So, it's our time.
Alice, do you have anything to add to this?
I'm trying to think if I do. I don't know. I just like writing about people and everything, and sort of, I mean, my main interest is sort of always like, kind of like, okay, what can happen is one thing, but how can you push what can happen to be like, more than that? Like, well, what would you like to have happen? So like to kind of like push the boundaries, again, with like kind of debunking myths and stereotypes and sort of like what you'd expect. I'm always like trying to like skew what's expected. And so I'm writing about, whether I'm writing from a male point of view or kid's point of view, or, a dog's point of view, I'm trying to like get in it and just skew it a little bit. So that said, all the there's no straightforward sexuality in my work. It's always a little bit off.
Life is always a little bit off.
Yeah.
So it's this morning I did a Zoom session with some authors, and we were discussing this topic because we were going to come see this tonight, right? And one of the authors, who is brilliant, held up like the list of banned books from the libraries, and almost all of them were LGBTQ books. And not all of those books, but many of those books were being flagged as banned books for LGBTQ, but also for explicit content, right? And it is interesting to me that she said that the previous books, like that for decades, there were zero LGBTQ banned books. And I'm wondering if that's because there weren't any, or they weren't they weren't considered mainstream enough to be banned from school library. Like
Yeah.
Lady Chatterley's Lover may not have even made people's radar. I don't know, like how. I'm just curious if you've had any contact with banned books and how your works were affected by that or not affected by that, or just what you think about it. I mean, we all hate banned books, obviously. Don't ban books, but
Right.
let people read.
Yeah. I don't think my books have been banned, but I have lived in countries for the last 15 years where it's illegal to be gay. So that's, been really interesting because I have a 12-year-old child who identifies as non-binary, and yet, and I don't feel like I want to talk about their sexuality because they're young and that's theirs to disclose. But it's weird to, I'm trying to navigate making them feel really good about their own sexuality and like it's not something they need to hide in a culture where she can't tell everyone.
Right.
I mean, they can't tell anyone. Sorry, I'm still working on the pronouns. I'm trying really hard. It's an adjustment. And, and that's tough because they are in a classroom with people who do not accept who they are.
And you were saying that your child has 4 languages. They speak 4 languages. And to choose a pronoun that doesn't work in other languages. I mean, how do you do non-binary pronouns in a language that literally has no non-gendered words, much less pronouns?
Right. Well, that's interesting because the French, last time we were in France, which is the only place we have a permanent home, Theo came home and said, oh, they have this new pronoun that they're using for like non-binary people in France. So there is.
What is it? Just out of curiosity.
Oh God, what is it? It's like it's
between le and la and
between un and un. It's like I don't know. I'm sorry.
You borrow from the German.
I don't remember what it is. But also, I have a friend visiting from Norway at the moment, and she was saying that the Swedish or the Finns have a separate word for non-binary.
Wow.
But
so
I don't know.
Popping up in all the languages, just like
yeah.
I think every language is going to have to come up with its own
right.
set of.
What happens with language, right?
It evolves. And
yeah,
it's interesting, Jennifer. I noticed that I'm sorry, I noticed this, and you can, whatever. But when you said that you were bisexual, you also said, "But I'm pansexual, bisexual." And I was just reading in preparation of this. I was reading all this. My web history was very interesting, and like I searched everything about sexuality and like things, and I was quite surprised to know that there were and some like 18 different sexualities right now. That you can choose from, apparently, and more if you wish, but 18 is
we were looking through that recently. I think my child and we were looking through that and we were like, well, I feel like I identify with at least 7 of these or whatever. I don't like
some of those sexualities seem to be like moments in time, like there was like this phase of like asexual that like I hate everybody and I don't ever want to have sex again, and then But I was interested that as the vocabulary changes, those of us that are over 2 decades have to evolve our own vocabulary about how we self-identify, because there's like a whole evolution of spectrum of choices out there that I thought it was very interesting.
That is very interesting, for sure.
And as writers, I mean, I suppose unless we're writing historical fiction, it's kind of our job to keep up with the vocabulary. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, I was just interested that you also were like bisexual. No, wait, pansexual. Like,
yeah, I mean, and then sometimes I just want to be like, I'm just sexual. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I want to check yes. Can I just say yes?
I don't want to be in a box. Like I just whatever. If I like something, I might be attracted to it, and we'll just we'll
go from the fact. Yeah, we'll go from there.
So I have a very different question, and I want to ask it because we're getting close to the time. So you've mentioned writing about things that you want to see. Have you ever reacted to something that you have seen and written about something? Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Many years ago, I was in a theater and I saw The Lover, and I was so shocked by all the, it was just so, there was so much race that was involved, and it was so complicated in so many ways. And I still actually, the novel I'm working on right now, I actually speak to certain scenes in that movie and in that book. And I'm wondering, have you ever had anything like that where you respond to something that you have read about or seen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, as I said earlier, when I discovered Mary Gaitskill, I don't remember when she first came out with Bad Behavior, but for me, it was such a revelation. What I loved about her writing is that you could see everything that was happening. And at the time, I had a writing teacher who's actually a wonderful writer, but her perspective was, well, you don't put it on the page. It's like going to the bathroom. And Mary Gaitskill, everything is, no, you see everything, and it's not necessarily good sex, or it's, and you know that you can, being able to visualize things in writing is so key, having those details, those visceral details that let you in. So that was kind of a revelation, like, wow, like I could really see this. And when did she publish that book? It's like many years ago, right? Maybe 30 years ago. I'm not sure.
I think it was in the 90s sometime.
Yeah.
It was really cool for me as a writer to discover that, what if I show what's really happening? And it's not only that she's showing what's happening with the physicality, but all the emotions. And so that was just really had a big impact on me as a writer.
Okay. Alice, how about you?
Yeah, I can't think of anything specifically, but I feel like just generally, a lot of what I write has to, in some way, be in kind of it's influenced by things out there. I'm trying to think of anything in terms of sort of sexuality in particular. I think, just like I said, generally the novel I wrote, Dogtown, was a lot about trying to debunk and change expectations around sexuality. I mean, that's not what the book is about, but with the sexual component to each of the relationships where there is sex, it doesn't go the way you'd expect given the kind of demographics of the characters. And I think that was just a response to all the stuff I'd seen and read that, like Christina was saying, these young people, they don't even know what they're doing. Like, you read, I don't know. So yeah, nothing specific comes to mind.
I want to give a chance to the audience. If you guys have any questions, this is your moment to ask them, because we're going to have to go pretty soon. Oh, wait, look, there are people who are already talking about things. Like, they're talking amongst themselves out there. Cowboys Are My Weakness by Pam Houston, and of course, Fear of Flying. There's, yeah, I'm looking really quick for some of these. Oh, sorry.
I love Cowboys.
Maureen Pickington says, all perfectly chosen excerpts, delightfully read.
Thank you. I really enjoyed all the readers, including the new fellow, or
Yes.
Sarah, yeah, she's great.
Yeah, it was what a visceral piece she wrote. Oh my goodness. But I really enjoyed, everyone's writing was so unique, and I want to go to the books now and get a larger.
We have the books. They're on the bookshop. There's a bookshop.org link. There's a shelf just for you. And if you just go on ourbookshop.org, which means you go on bookshop.org and look for Pen Parentis. And then once you're on the shop of Pen Parentis, you can find the shelf that's October 2022. And here's all the books by all these writers are on those shelves. You guys, it is time, and I have had such a good time talking to you, Jennifer, Alice, Amy. Jennifer's like flying in, zooming in from London. So it's like we're like, whoa, not just bi-coastal, but like binational. So, and this is very cool. All our audience people, thank you very much. Leah, thank you for saying that.
Thank you, everyone.
And we will see you all here hopefully next month in November. What's our theme next month? Is it trauma? Is it writing trauma, Christina?
Trauma.
And who's on that panel? Diane Zinna. Who else?
Oh,
Yeah, we got Diane Zinna.
yeah. I love
And
Diane.
who are the other two? Who are the other two? Off the top, do you remember off the top of your head?
I
can't
do.
remember.
Hold on one second. It's just whenever I'm on the spot, I cannot
I
remember.
know, I do the same thing.
For some reason.
Completely blank out.
Okay, so we have
Julie, thanks for coming, Julie. Jolene, thank you for coming, Jolene. Oh, let me give a quick shout out to all these people who paid for their tickets because I love them. Marie, Maeve, Donna, Lisa, Elise, Jolene, Vivian, Jacqueline, Kristen, thank you for paying us money. We love you for donating. Thank you. All you people, go donate to us so that we can keep doing this. We want to do this forever. We love these humans. Everybody.
Okay. Next month we have Diana Zinna, Anna Malika Nansara Tubbs. We have Jessica DeLong and Richard Jeffrey Newman.
Ooh, we have a poet, Richard Jeffrey Newman.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be good. Everybody should come back for Writing Trauma. Everybody should support their authors. Follow that link that we just posted that gives you our bookshop link, and that lets you access all the books by these fabulous, fabulous people. Jennifer,
You won't
Allison,
regret it.
Amy.
Their books are amazing.
Thank you so much for coming, all you human beings. You are amazing.